Are the mics turned up all the way?
Should be the same as before.
Okay. All right, I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Governing Board, public hearing. The time is now 7:02. Let the record show all board members are present. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I move we adopt the agenda with the exception of correcting item 2A to read public hearing for fiscal year 2017-18 expenditure budget revision 2. That'd be revision 2 instead of 1.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, Mr. Miglerino.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, we are obligated by statute to revise our expenditure budget by May 15th each year. It's the last opportunity we have to revise our budget for this current fiscal year. And so we've provided some of the detail of that, including the actual state required forms in the board packet. There's a lot of in and outs, if you will, with the numbers. We had an increase to our revenue control limit, or the funding that we get based on the state formula, of about $782,000. There was a decrease in our district additional assistance, the true up of the district additional assistance, the secondary cut of $322,000, so that was a negative number. We also overstated our carry forward from fiscal year 17 into fiscal year 18, so that adjustment is $290,000. And then we had an increase in a very small increase in Prop 123 funding, and then we also had the true up of the teacher, the legislative teacher only pay, the 1.06%, and that was a negative $368,000. If you add all that up, we actually have just under $192,000 reduction to our fiscal year 18 budget, and that has been reflected in the forms that we have. It is required, as we're revising this budget, for us to conduct a public hearing so the public can speak to the budget revision, and that's what this meeting is about. At the regular meeting, there's an agenda item for the board to consider adopting the revision. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, and then we do need to open it up for the public.
Do board members have any questions for Mr. Miglerino at this time? Mrs. Fisher, did you have any questions? I can't see. Okay. Ms. Tweedy? Okay. I don't have any slips for public comments from anyone, so... Okay. Okay. So if there's any members of the public who wish to comment, ask questions, please raise your hand. I do not see any hands in the air. Kind of reminds me of being back teaching. When I ask the question, no one can answer.
Somebody, I thought.
Oh, there's a question? If you want to come, please step to the podium, please, and state your name.
My name is Alex Porter. Dr. Finch, Dr. Finch, President Frank, members of the board. I just wanted to clarify, was that a $290,000 reduction in the fiscal year 18 budget?
Just for clarification, it's a $191,974 reduction to the fiscal year 18 budget, the current year budget that we're in. So just under $192,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, if there are no other members of the public who wish to speak, then I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. The meeting is adjourned in record time for us, but not so fast. We have another meeting coming up. But wait, there's more. Okay, well, moving right along. I just like this gavel tonight. I'd like to call to order the regular governing board meeting. The time is now 7:07. Let the record show all board members are present. Will you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
I motion to adopt the agenda with the exception of moving action item 6A after 2C and to correct the title of action item 6D to read Adopt Fiscal Year 2017-18 Expenditure Budget Revision Number 2.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Motion carries 5-0. We have adopted the agenda.
Bless you.
Okay, so we will start off with governing board reports, and I think normally I go last, but I think I would like to go first this time. And I do have a concern. I'm sorry. Okay. I do have a concern that I would like to address in my board report tonight. Board policy clearly states that, and it's with the agenda, so just FYI. Board policy clearly states that meeting agendas are set by the superintendent in consultation with the board president on behalf of the governing board as a whole. So I was quite astonished on Friday when I discovered changes had been made to tonight's agenda that through a screenshot that had been posted on Facebook. The item in question is the salary recommendation. And to my knowledge, that has not yet been ratified by our employee groups through the agreed-upon NST process, nor was it previewed by the governing board. Normally, I would expect this type of item to come to us as a preview first, prior to voting, but it was posted as an action item for tonight. So this really puts the board in the uncomfortable position of either voting to approve this item without what I would consider to be due diligence, or voting to table the item, which will upset staff and employees who came tonight expecting a vote. I think this is completely disrespectful to the board, and I can only speak for myself. So just let me say, I don't appreciate this. This is a very uncomfortable position to be in. When I inquired how this happened, I was told it was a mistake. But I just have to be honest and just give some feedback that this is not the first time the games appear to have been played with the agenda. Items have been placed on the agenda without supporting documentation, which was supposed to be there. On one occasion, documentation for an item disappeared from the agenda before the beginning of the meeting and then magically reappeared in the middle of the meeting as if we're the governing board of Hogwarts. Each time I'm told this is a mistake, but when you see the same things happen over and over, then to me that's not a mistake. It becomes a pattern of behavior. And I don't want to see this continue to happen with the agenda. The policy NST process needs to be followed, board policy needs to be followed. So that's negative part of my board report. On the positive side, I had the opportunity to attend some wonderful STEM days and nights and STEM career days at West Wing, Sierra Verde, Mountain Shadows, as well as Anthem and Sonoran Foothills. And all of those schools did a wonderful job. The students were awesome. It was a pleasure to attend those events. And I had the great pleasure of teaching a class at Copper Creek in 4th grade. And was happy to know that some of the younger siblings of my former students had heard my name and knew who I was, because they said they heard I was the teacher that never assigned homework. So that is now my claim to fame. So that is my board report. Ms. Tweedy.
I would like to congratulate the recipients of Deer Valley's Teacher of the Year awards and apologize that I couldn't make it to the event. I had math tutoring that evening, and we are a late start school, and since the grades are about ready to come out, math tutoring's gotten a lot more popular, so I had to stay and do that. And I also just wanted to say I concur with Ms. Frank's comments, and I appreciate your patience tonight. I think it's going to be a long meeting. Because it was listed as an action item, and I really don't know what to do about it at this point. I know you guys are here expecting a vote. I spent all weekend researching this, and I have a lot of questions and clarification and suggestions. I normally would withhold my comments and email them privately, and that's not an option. So I'm sorry, and I ask you to bear with me, and I know that the meetings get really long. I know that because I've sat through a lot of long meetings. So, and this isn't, a paid position. So I just ask for your patience. It's going to be a long night, and I just apologize for it in advance. Thank you.
Mrs. Fisher.
Originally, I wasn't going to do a board report, but in light of the prior two, I feel I need to. It is not uncommon at all that things are done exactly the way it just happened. It's actually been somewhat common practice that Mr. Migarino negotiates with NST when they are at a consensus point. He puts it on the agenda. So while someone may feel slighted, I think to pose an accusation that somehow there's a malicious intent behind it, I think is really inappropriate. All of our employees work very, very, very hard, and it's if Mr. Migarino put it on, for whatever reason, he believed that it was the appropriate thing to do based on historical practice, and I want to thank him for the work he does with NST, and I want to thank him for the work he does with the budget, just like we thank everyone else for the work they do. There have been a few mistakes. We're in board docs. Board docs is new. We have a new superintendent. We have a new board secretary, a new board new superintendent secretary. Our associate superintendent for curriculum has a new assistant. There is a lot of new people. And I think to believe that it's a malicious intent behind it, and that's why something was done, I just think is I think it's hurtful, and I think it's inappropriate, and I think we have to honor and value all of our staff, or we lose them. And other than that, I don't really have anything else to report. Oh, no, I do have one more thing. I don't know if Kim Crooks is here from Deer Valley.
I think she's watching a baseball game.
They're at the game. I want to thank Deer Valley administration and the teachers that welcomed me into their classroom on Monday. They let me spend an entire day to see what it's like to be a teacher and to work with students and discuss curriculum and discuss classroom management. It's really amazing to get an opportunity to stand by them and see, and so I just want to thank Deer Valley for doing that for me. That's it.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Mrs. O'Brien.
First of all, thank you to everybody for being here. I've lost count on how many times we've recently filled the room, but I am excited that the room is being filled on a regular basis. I think that we will, these are the first steps towards building back the trust that we've heard a lot of people talk about not being there. So thank you for getting involved. Thank you for asking questions. Thank you for emailing. I apologize if I didn't get back to any of you right away. I have tried to answer them all, but when they come in the multitudes they have, sometimes it is difficult. So bear with us. But it is wonderful to see all of your wonderful faces. And yesterday I was able to attend Mountain Ridge's A+ School of Excellence Award. Yes. And I know Ms. Miranda was very excited to win it, although I will say that for the staff, this is commonplace because this is their fourth one. So while it was her first, congratulations to all the Mountain Ridge folks. And I know that we have 2 other high schools as well. Deer Valley High School received theirs yesterday, and I believe and Sandra Day O'Connor, believe, received theirs last week as well. So kudos to all the hard work going on, not just at those 3 high schools, but across the districts. And that will be, and I would ask also that you bear with us this evening if there seem like there are a lot of questions regarding the salary negotiation proposal. And if we do, I know Ms. Frank talked about, do we vote on it, do we table it? I would just ask that you know that whatever we do tonight, that it is because we want to make sure we do our due diligence and have answers and get those answers for us. So if you could bear with us, I ask that of you all.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien.
Is it my turn?
It is your turn, Mrs. Ordway.
All right, so we've been able to be invited to the Teacher of the Year, Rookie of the Year, seeing the faces from the past and the present, and the smiles when they got that surprise $500 check was awesome. Thank you for Deer Valley Education Foundation for always keeping the teachers front and center. There's playoffs going on tonight. I think it might be the first time, maybe ever, that 2 of our schools are going against it. So whoever wins, we all won. We have closing for the arts, whether it's dance recitals or choir concerts or choirs that are in California, wherever they are now, competing and showing off that hard work. And I believe that we've done well. We have a lot of A+ schools, and Ann was at the Mountain Ridge, and Ms. Fisher and I were at Deer Valley yesterday, and that also was the beginning of their staff meeting, so it was filled with all the staff. And Ms. Roberts, the assistant principal there, is retiring, I think, for real, and she's a cake baker, always has been, and she baked her last cake for the school, so that was awesome. We've got field trips that are going on for 6th graders, 8th graders, that are getting ready to do their transition. So we've all done our job because they are ready to move to their next step. Also, Senior Institute at Barry Goldwater is a year-long project that they have embedded in their ELA classes that all students participate in. And it is an awesome, awesome program that they do. And they whittled it down from 300 seniors to 3. And the ideas that come out of these kids, would just make the media crazy if they knew how great public education was and took the time to see exactly what it is we do. So you're all here. Last but not least, I thought I was going to have to skip the promotion dresses for the 8th graders, but they're all coming tomorrow to Goldwater to see if they can get their free dresses, so they'll have if they haven't had the dance, their dresses. It is my honor and has always been my honor to serve this district, whether you're the student, the crossing guard, the teacher, the superintendent, the board member, whoever you are, the facilities, painter. I just love this district. So tonight when we go through whatever item it is we're going through, we ask the questions not because we don't want to give people what they believe they need and deserve, but because we want the trust going two ways. You want to trust us. We want to be able to trust you that when we make a decision on a recommendation that you guys have, your associations have said this is what we want, and we approve that, then we want the trust of you that it's not going to go backwards and hit us that, well, that's not really what we wanted. So that's why the questions, for me, that's why I asked them. So on that note, I'm done.
Thank you, Mrs. Ordway. Dr. Finch.
Well, as the superintendent, I'm responsible again for the all my employees, and I know that that's my fault if there was a mess up in the agenda. Sorry about that. I think the intention behind it was to get the employees the raises as soon as possible. So I think the intention was correct. But as I work with different board presidents too, different board presidents have different ideas on formation and order and that kind of stuff. So I'll try to be better. Sorry about that. Second thing, we didn't do awards tonight because a lot of them were OC and RID students, and obviously they weren't going to be here to accept their awards. And so we're going to have to extend our awards next time. So bring your smiles a little bit earlier, and that will be a little bit longer than usual. We'll be putting two sections of awards together. So, and this time of year, we have awards coming out our ears, which is a good thing. We have a lot of things to be very proud of. So, and yes, I'm getting texts from Dr. Miller and Dr. McNeil and everyone else on the score of the game. So if I do Ridge is right, this means Ridge, this means O'Connor. So I can keep you on the score, what's going on, okay? Pay
I
attention.
think you're just going to have to interrupt with
I'm just going to have to
updates. I'm
interrupt.
sorry.
Okay. Just like church. You yell out in the middle of church and you get in trouble. But no, it's very exciting to be part of this machine and to watch us win the awards in academics and athletics. It's pretty fun to be a part of it. So exciting day today as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Finch. Mr. Miglerino.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, we have two reports to share with you this evening, and I'll be brief just in the interest of time for some of the other more weighty topics on the agenda. Starting with the April financial report, I'm just going to touch on the M&O report. We're projecting a carry forward of $999,000. That does not include the May revision. That will reduce it by the $192,000 that we previously mentioned during the hearing, making it a projected carry forward of about $800,000. Comparing that over last month, we were at $896,000, so just slightly down from last month. Year over year, we were at just over $1 million a year ago at this point in time. So little tighter as we have allocated more and more dollars in our budget, which was intentional. But I don't think there's any reason for us to be alarmed by any of those numbers. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about the financial reports.
Do board members have any questions? Okay, moving right along.
The second report we have just is the enrollment report. It's through the 161st day or April 25th, showing a reduction of 0.5%, which has been consistent over the last several reports that we've shared with you. So no new news to report in regards to the enrollment report. But I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions on this item? None? All right. Thank you, Mr. Miglerino. We're moving on to, we moved up item 6A. We'll need a motion for that, and then we'll turn it over to Mrs. Moffett.
President Frank, governing board members.
I think we need a motion first.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I move that the governing board approve the recommendation for the Director of Organizational Improvement and Professional Learning.
Okay. Ms.
President
Moffett.
Frank, governing board members, Dr. Finch, it's my pleasure to introduce to the audience Dr. Finch's recommendation for the position of Director of Organizational Improvement and Professional Learning, and that is Dr. Paula Chunas. She is currently the principal at Sierra Verde, has worked in our district in many roles for a very long time, high school and elementary level, as well as the district office, and we welcome her back to the district office in this role. So Dr. Chunas.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions from the board at this time?
Just want to say congratulations.
Okay, let's vote first, and then we can say congratulations. All right, others
She
in
stood
favor?
up. She smiled.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none? Passes 5-0?
Did I say it now?
Congratulations.
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 And now you can gracefully leave.
Okay, so that brings us up to item 3A, which is public comments. We have one speaker wishing to speak during general public comments. So Marshall Militano, if you would please step forward to the podium, and Ms. Tweedy will read the admonishment. I don't think she trusts you, Mr. Militano.
It's on the screen.
The board invites public comments on the district's business in general and on any agenda item in specific. All speakers must observe the rules of decorum. Speakers must fill out a card listing name, address, and topic and hand it to the board secretary prior to the president calling the meeting to order. Speakers must make their comments in no more than 3 minutes. If necessary to accommodate all speakers within the 30-minute overall limit, the board president may shorten each speaker's time. Constructive criticism is in order. Rudeness, vulgarity, disruptive conduct, or remarks disrespecting personal dignity are not in order and will not be allowed. Under the Arizona Open Meeting Law, the governing board cannot discuss or act on any items not listed on the agenda. Board members may respond to criticism made by a speaker, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be put on a future agenda.
Okay, please state your name for the record.
My name is Marshall Militano. I've been working in transportation for about 14 years as a bus driver and a clerk. President Frank, board members, Dr. Finch, and distinguished guests. Imagine walking into transportation to find the receptionist and the secretary only, because everyone else is driving a bus. All the supervisors, dispatchers, trainer, assistant director, maybe even our director, Ernie Mesa. Even a couple of mechanics are out driving as well. That is what you will probably find on a daily basis at Deer Valley Transportation. For years now, transportation has struggled to recruit and retain bus drivers. Why is that? When potentially new drivers walk into transportation, the first two most asked questions are, how much do you pay, and do you provide medical insurance? Well, the answer to the first question is we pay about $2 an hour less than our peer districts. The answer to the second question is, yes, we do provide medical care, but there is a cost to that. Deer Valley needs to compete better. This year, transportation had to almost stop transporting after-school activities and athletics because we could not provide buses. Instead, the schools had to use charter buses or limos at almost double the cost. Transporting students to and from school is our main priority, but we do provide the other services as well when we have drivers to do it. But even that has become harder to accomplish. We've had to crunch runs, add more students to those buses as well. Transportation has done what it has needed to do to make it work, but we're at a breaking point. If dispatchers are driving all the time, how can they assist schools, parents, and drivers, especially in case of an emergency? If supervisors are driving all the time, how can they be efficient and effective in their daily duties? If the mechanics are driving daily, how much more strain does that put on other shop employees to try and keep the fleet running? Deer Valley Transportation is unable to be the best that it can be because we lack the tools needed to be the best that we can be. We need drivers. The heart of any organization or company is its people. If Deer Valley is going to be a destination point for good employees, then Deer Valley needs to do better. That means better pay, better benefits, and better working conditions. Deer Valley has an opportunity to accomplish that now, this year. And the question I leave with you is, what is the plan?
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Militano. All right, so we will move on to our old business, starting with 4A, late start, early release, and that would be Dr. Galligan. And we need a motion.
I move that the governing board approve the administrator's recommendation regard.
I recommend that the governing board approve the administration's proposal regarding early release days beginning in the 2019-20 school year to facilitate professional learning communities for improved student achievement and behavior.
Second.
Okay, Dr. Galligan.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, the PowerPoint that is up there is the same PowerPoint from the previous board meeting. This is the board meeting where you all will take action on our proposal that you have heard about since December of 2017. And I'd be happy to answer any additional questions that you might have, but we are ready for your direction. Thank you.
All right, so I will open it up to board members for comments, questions, or further clarification from Dr. Galligan. Ms. Tweedy?
We weren't planning on doing this next year, were we? To be perfectly honest.
So, your question is, when does this take effect? Okay. Okay.
Sorry. To be perfectly honest, I didn't have time to research this as much as I wanted to because I was researching the salary proposal. And so if the most of the board knows what they want to do, I guess we could vote, but I'm not prepared to vote on this item, so I don't know anyone else's feelings.
Mrs. Fisher?
I have looked at it. At first, I was kind of against it, kind of just because of, well, parents don't like kids being out of school. Teachers don't like kids being out of their class. But the more research I've done, the more I've looked in it. The teachers I've spoke with who are part of districts that have their PLCs regularly scheduled this way have confirmed that Wednesday is the best day. And so I am ready to vote.
Mrs. Ordway? Or Mrs. O'Brien, did you have comments or?
If I could make some clarifying comments.
Please do.
And I'm happy to answer the first question, which is I am prepared to vote, but I did receive a couple of emails, so I just want to put on the record the clarification that it is for the 2019-20 school year, not the one we are about to start in August. And because I think the title, 1920, not the one we're starting in August. Yes, I apologize if I misspoke there. That the title, late start, early release, caused some confusion for some parents, which were my emails, that it is going to indeed be for an early release, 90 minutes on Wednesday. So we're doing that once a month right now. It'll just become weekly. So for folks who might be watching, I just wanted to make sure that that was clarified for them.
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, we do an half-day release once a week that is about 2.5 hours. So it's, even though it's not quite that 2.5 hours, it's 90 minutes. It will happen either 2 times a month or 3 times a month, just depending on the calendar.
Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Galligan.
Mrs. Ordway?
Dr. Galligan, were a couple of emails that I got from employees that wondered about the drop their students off, their children, at their campuses to the after school, not for a cost.
So the current proposal, and it would be for us to actually live through in a year, 2019-20, for our students of staff members who would need to drop their children in for that 90-minute time period. Over those number of days that have been identified, Community Ed would not charge a fee for that time only. And that just fits with some federal legislation that we have to follow, as well as what we believe we can support fiscally through our Community Ed program. So that was the proposal that we put forward.
So the follow-up to that is, if you are at a campus that does not have that program, do you have the opportunity, I don't know how the logistics would work, to get those children to another campus to have that taken care of?
President Frank, Ms. Ordway, that would be something we could definitely look into. It was not something that we discussed ahead of time. Not all of our campuses have the before or after care program. A vast number of them do. We would certainly want to work with the campuses. I am not sure how that would look.
All right, those were the two major questions from employees. Thank you.
So, that I also received emails from parents who were concerned about the change and the changes they would have to make to their current child care arrangements, as well as concerns from employees who also would need the child care. So I don't know how that would work for teachers at campuses that don't have the Community Ed before and after school. Depending on how close one is to your campus, the amount of time you would have to get your children over there before you would have to start your PLC or your activity
Right,
for
well,
the
that's what I'm
afternoon
saying. I think
may or
that-
may not be
yeah.
feasible. So,
Well, we might get bus drivers, and maybe they could ferry them over. You never know what could happen, right? Just saying.
so there would need to be some plan at campuses that don't have that. I would not want employees to have an additional cost as a result of this decision. Any employees, whether they have a Community Ed program at their campus or not, I would not want to see an additional cost. So that is something that would need to be organized, determined, figured out for those campuses that don't have the
It's just
Community Ed.
logistics.
Okay. And I do have some concerns about creating a big change for parents in the environment that we're in. So there were some parents who were concerned about that. Is there anything further? Okay, I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
I will also abstain. So 2 abstentions, 3 ayes. Okay, thank you, Dr. Galligan. And we are moving on to item 4B, second reading of revised policy IKA and IKAB.
I recommend that the governing board approve the administration's recommendation to revise policy IKA, grading systems, and policy IKAB, student progress reports.
Second.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, there are no changes from the last board meeting and the first reading that we had.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Galligan. Are there any questions or discussion from the board members? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. And item 4C, second reading of revised policy BIE.
I move that the governing board conduct a second reading and adopt revised governing board policy, BIE, board member insurance liability.
Second.
Dr. Galligan, anything to add? No changes to this since, or Mr. Miglerino, I'm sorry.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, we do have a slight change to policy BIE, and that was a suggestion that Ms. Fisher mentioned during the first reading. So the change is that we've added that a qualifying HIPAA special enrollment event will also be a qualifying event for a board member to elect our health insurance coverage. And just for clarification, that would be at the board member's expense to be able to elect for that, under any one of the conditions. So the original change with BIE was to clarify that it would take place during our benefit open enrollment period or immediately after being seated on the board. This change, the one minor change, is that if there is a HIPAA special enrollment event, it would also be a qualifying event for them to elect coverage as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miglerino. Are there any questions regarding the change? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No, the motion carries 5-0. And we will move on to second reading of revised policy JIH.
I move that the governing board
Recommended action.
accept administration's recommendation to revise policy JIH, student interrogation, searches, and arrest.
Second.
All right. No changes? Okay. Any questions? All right. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. All right, that is it for old business. So now we are at item 5, which is the consent agenda, and I need a motion.
I move that the governing board approve the consent agenda items A through H. Oh, no, N. A through N.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the consent agenda passes 5-0. And that brings us to tonight's action items in record time.
Hey, quit jinxing us.
I'm not responsible for what happens after this point.
Oh,
All right,
nice.
so we already have done item 6A, so we can check that one off. We are now at item 6B, which is to approve employee travel. So I need a motion.
I move that the governing board approve all employees out-of-state travel per governing board policy GCCE.
Second.
Okay, so in the past, we've done it trip by trip. We can do it as a whole group bundle. I'm perfectly okay with that. What do my fellow board members, what would they like to do?
I'm looking at a bundle tonight.
I have a lot of questions, but
Oh, well.
but I don't care if we. I don't care how we do it, but no, they're just clarifying questions.
Okay, so Mrs. Fisher, why don't you ask your clarifying questions, and then hopefully
And
we'll be able
see
to
where
do
it
it all
goes
as
from
a bundle.
Okay.
No, but we need a motion. I thought we had a motion.
We do have a
We did have a
motion.
motion, and we had a second.
Yes.
Okay. One comment just a comment I'd like to make is, can we possibly get these in a Excel format, not a PDF? It was a pain getting these in a way that I could actually analyze what they were. Now, this is $56,000 worth of travel. When you look at the whole thing, now I understand that there are significant portions of it that are grants or Title I and are required, such as, sorry, my son does not know when I'm in a meeting. But it's still almost $30,000 out of M&O. It's $28,400 out of M&O. Now, as I look through these, I can see the value in them. The IB program is very important to us, but the IB program alone is $20,000. $20,100. Is there a reason? Is this a training that we can't possibly bring someone in? They could train many more people if we could bring someone, and that's $20,000. We're paying a ton for hotels and transportation. Is there a reason we're sending people elsewhere for these? So that's the IB one. And the other is AVID. And I know that AVID is being paid for through the Title I, and it's required. But Title I requires that we use it for training. It doesn't require that we send someone to travel for training. Couldn't we get a better bang for our buck if we bring someone in? This is $17,000, and we're sending people to Anaheim, I'm assuming California, not Arizona. The agenda says Arizona. That's the only reason I said that. But the other question I have when I look at AVID is we have multiple people, and it's set in different trips, going to the same event, but I show that two individuals are going, well, one individual is going a day earlier than the others. Another individual is going 2 days earlier than the others. The one that's going 2 days earlier is the same cost as the individuals that are going the regular days. The one that is 1 day earlier is going at a significantly greater cost. And there's an individual, again, who's going at a greater cost, what does it look like, $400 greater cost than their counterparts. Are we not using our travel agency, or why? What is the explanation for these greater costs, and why would two individuals need to go earlier than the conference?
Mrs. Frank, before Dr. Galligan answers, since we're going to have these questions, I'm going to ask that we do it trip by trip, because it's not giving a good context. So we might as well just go travel by travel so we have a full story.
I would agree with that. So,
The only problem is this is the reason I said I wasn't concerned before you guys make that decision. If you look at the AVID trip, AVID is trip C and trip P, which I also didn't understand why they were split. I mean, it's different departments. I think it's by department, but it would be great if we would lump by trip. So it would be C and P is AVID. So those two go together. And then if you're going to look at IB, it is JMND.
I would just request we do them by trip.
why don't we
and
just go
start at the top,
I think,
please.
yeah, why don't we just go through trip by trip, and as we come up on a trip that you have, any board member has questions on, we can, would that be more efficient for you as well, Dr. Galligan? Okay. All right, so we'll start with trip A, and I guess we'll need an individual motion for each trip.
I'm good enough. We can talk as we go.
I move that the governing board approve Trip A, Educators Rising National Conference.
Second.
Okay, were there any concerns from any board members or questions about this particular trip?
No.
Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving trip A?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so trip A is approved, 5-0. Trip B? Are B and C the same, going to the same place? Then fine, let's do B and C together then.
I move that the governing board approve trips B and C to the AVID Summer Institute.
Second.
And there are questions regarding this trip?
Yeah, well,
Okay,
the
go ahead.
questions are, what is the disparity in the individuals who are, some are significantly more costly than others, and the two individuals, one's going a day before everyone else, the other one's going 2 days before everyone else. Is there a pre-conference? What's the purpose for that? And is there a reason we're not bringing it in-house?
President Frank, Mrs. Fisher, I checked with the principal about this. 4 of the educators will be going June 27th through June 30th, and that's the 1880 that you see. One is going June 27th through June 30th, and that cost is $1380, and that is because that individual has family in that location and will be staying, so does not have hotel cost. Another individual will be going June 27th through June 30th, and that cost was $22.80. That is because all of the previous ones are women, and they are sharing a room. That one is a man, and he has his own room. And then we have the last one is going from June 25th through June 30th. That individual is going early because they have family there, but they will be staying with the rest of their team
For the
for
conference.
the conference, and that's why the conference amount remains the same.
And that's the individual that's going the 2 days early?
Yes.
Because there's one that's going a day early, there's one that's going 2 days early.
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, I'll have to look at that. I had just found the 27th and then the one individual going on the 25th, so I apologize. I will look further into that one.
Actually, we're not, it's not lumped in, it's P.
So it's a different, it's
Yeah.
not, it's not in this B or C.
It's not, so we can approve it without that, because it is a significantly greater cost, and it is, they're going a day early.
Right.
But they're not in what the motion was,
This one
so
is-
they're in P.
Okay, so then we are looking at voting on trips B and
And
C.
C.
Are there any further questions? Right. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that carries 5-0. And we will move on to trip D.
Well, I move
And
that
I
the governing
think D and
board,
E,
it's all the way through G, I checked it.
okay, D through G,
H,
G through,
D through H.
D through
I move
H.
that the governing board approve trips D through H, IB middle years program training.
Second.
Okay, are there questions regarding these
Well-
trips?
Could Dr. Galligan just explain?
Yeah, M
The-
and N are also in there.
Okay.
President Frank, members of the board, the International Baccalaureate Program requires that teachers participate in IB World Training every 3 years. So within a 3-year span, any teacher who participates in either IB MYP or IB Diploma, or if we had the primary year program, that within a 3-year period, they have training through the IB organization. Unfortunately, the IB organization has never, to my knowledge, and I've been aware of this for a number of years, had specific training for all of the different content areas in Arizona. So what we do is we look for the closest location, and then we share costs so that we can keep that cost down as much as possible. The one that they identified is the one that you see here, and I believe it is in Austin, Texas. They change their locations, but there are locations that are further, so we identify that area that's closest. The IB organization would not be able to bring an individual to us simply because every single one of those content areas has unique training because of the content itself. And so they don't send people to you. You have to go to them.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Galligan, for the clarification. Any further questions?
Nope, I just
Hearing-
needed to understand why we were spending $20,000.
Nope,
If it's a valid reason, I'm
that's-
fine with it.
No, I'm glad you asked the question, Mrs. Fisher. So I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that carries 5-0. Which brings us to trip I.
I move that the governing board approve trip I to ACTE Vision 2018.
Second. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Second.
Are there any questions regarding this trip?
I would just like Dr. Galligan to explain what that is.
President Frank, Ms. Ordway, that is, of course, one of our CTE trips. And again, it is providing our teachers who instruct children with the training they need to effectively teach in that content area or in that industry area, in particular for this one.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, because again, we have I and O are the same trip. We have one person going a day earlier. Is there a pre-conference on this one too? The total cost for I is $24.50. The total cost for O is $20.35, and the individual's going a day earlier.
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, I apologize for not checking in on this specific one. I can only assume that a similar situation occurs, that either they have family and will not need the hotel, or they are going, one is going earlier or not. I can certainly find that information out for you. That particular trip is
Till November.
much later. So we would have time for us to be able to bring that information back, or I could submit that in a
You know,
Thursday update.
and actually, I would appreciate that, because I and O, now that I'm looking at them, the one that goes a day later comes back a day earlier. And the one that leaves, that goes a day earlier, comes back a day later. And the lodging is there. There's a full expense there, and it is November, so if we could get that on maybe the next one, I would just appreciate that, so we understand why the disparity.
We will do that.
Okay, so then I had called for a vote, not realizing that you had additional questions. So how would you like to proceed? Are we tabling this?
I move to table travel trip I
And O.
And O.
and O. But
Oh,
I don't
no,
know that I can
I.
do that
You can't do
because
that. You're
O
right. You're
was
right.
not the original motion. I can only table the motion that
can
we're
only
talking
table
about.
It's
I.
not in it, so.
So I move to
Second.
table I.
Second.
Okay, so all those in favor of tabling trip I?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. No pun intended. So that carries 5-0. Okay, trip J.
I move that the governing board approve
Or is it,
Trip J,
yeah, it's all in one.
IB year program training.
Second.
Okay, questions regarding this trip?
Answered them already?
Okay.
Okay. So I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries 5-0.
I move that the governing board approve Trip K, Apple Academy.
Second.
Any questions regarding this trip? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, carries 5-0.
I move that the governing board approve Trip L, training of trainers, induction to restorative practices, and using circles effectively.
Second.
Any questions regarding this trip?
Dr. Galligan, could you explain what this trip is for?
President Frank, Ms. Ordway, this particular trip is to have the administrators at that campus receive training on restorative practices as a part of their behavior and positive social emotional student support.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there a reason we're sending 2 administrators from the same school versus 2 different schools, that they can bring it back district-wide, or at least more in the district?
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, this particular school has truly wanted to embark and embrace the idea of restorative practices. And when you have both of your administrators who are able to be trained, then that training can go back out to their campus with their leadership teams. That would be why this particular campus is moving forward with that. I know we have other individual campuses that are on a journey in restorative practices, but I'm not certain that they were ready for this training at this time.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, carries 5-0.
Can do M and N together.
So we are at M.
I move that the governing board approve trips M and N IB middle years program.
Second.
Questions?
Answered them.
Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, no, carries 5-0. So now we're up to trip O.
I move and. Table it, should I just move to
Move to table it.
I move that we table trip O, the trip to ACTE's Career Text Vision Conference.
And are you going to give a date for that? Are we going to do that the next meeting or the following, within the following 3 meetings? Doesn't matter to me. But just give a
Next
time.
one.
Okay. Did we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so that carries 5-0.
I move that the governing board approve trip P, Avid Summer Institute.
No, we haven't done this one.
I'll
Second.
Questions regarding this trip?
Dr. Galligan, could you give us some background on it?
President Frank, Ms. Ordway, as part of the AVID training,
And could you explain what AVID is?
AVID is a college readiness program that Deer Valley Middle School will be piloting over the next 2 years. It is a program that really targets campuses that have first-time college-going students in the family, minority children. It's to give our children who come to us from backgrounds that don't have similar experiences that leg up so that they can be successful as they go into high school and then on out into the workforce and college.
Thank you.
Okay, so are there any further questions? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, carries 5-0. And Ms. Tweedy, our last two.
I move that the governing board approve trips Q and R project Lead the Way.
Second.
Questions from board members?
Dr. Galligan, could you explain the purpose of the trip?
President Frank, Ms. Ordway, this also is a CTE related course to CTE Bioscience. It is a mandatory Project Lead the Way training on the principles for biomedical science courses, and it's a training that immerses teachers in that hands-on collaborative learning environment that they need to implement with students. And as part of Project Lead the Way, it is required.
Thank you.
Dr. Galligan, is there, I think it's wonderful that we could cover the larger one in the grant, the one that's going to be gone longer, the new employee. Is there a reason that we couldn't use the grant for the other one? One's grant funded, one's M&O.
Give me one quick moment. Mr. Biglorino gave me the heads up on this one. The grant is a high school grant, and Mr. Baumstock will be a high school teacher. Mr. Myers is a Hillcrest teacher, middle school, and the grant does not cover that, and that is why it is M&O funded.
Total sense. Okay, thank you. And next time, if I can get it in a if you send it in a spreadsheet, I could get it to you ahead of time, just for questions if they're there.
Okay, any further questions on this item? Then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, carries 5-0. Thank you, board members, for your questions. Thank you, Dr. Galligan, for your clarification. Very much appreciated. So that will move us on to item 6C, approve the addenda pre-approvals.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to pre-approve the addendas as presented.
Second.
Okay. Are there questions from governing board members regarding this item? Okay, I won't give you any more time then. Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. And that brings us to item 6D, adopt fiscal year 2017-18 expenditure budget revision number 2.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to adopt the second revision to the fiscal year 2017-18 expenditure budget.
Second.
Okay, we've already had a public hearing. Any further questions on this item? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, 5-0. Motion carries. Okay, so that brings us up to item 6E. I'm sorry. Yes, it was. Yeah. Approve, I believe it was.
Yeah, I said
Yeah,
two.
I said two. Item 6E, which is the revision number 1 to FY18 Classroom Site Fund Plan. So can I get a motion?
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the revision number 1 to the fiscal year 18 classroom site fund plan.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Miglerino, anything further? It looks like you have a presentation up.
I do, President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, and you've seen this before. So
Multiple times.
Yes, this will be the third time that we've taken a look at this, but just for the benefit of maybe others in the audience. So the Classroom Site Fund does allow for, or it is comprised of 3 different funds, and what we call the base salary or Fund 11, the performance pay or Fund 12, and the menu money Fund 13. We call it the menu money because statutorily there are multiple things that can be funded out of that, which has been part of the discussion that we've had the last 2 times that we've talked about the Classroom Site Fund. This is the approved plan that was approved back in June of 2017, in which the menu money on the far right column shows that there were items that were approved that were in addition to the salary to teachers. That I mentioned that specifically because the conversations that we had from previous discussions included making a revision to increase the amount that would be paid to teachers in this year. And then we have a future agenda item to talk about next year's plan as well. So just a forewarning of that. This is just kind of a pie chart. 100% of the base salary and 100% of the performance pay goes to teachers. Only a percentage of the Fund 13 goes to teachers currently, but combined that's 90% of the total allocation is going to teachers, even though not 100% of Fund 13 is going to teachers. We did, from the conversations, I wanted to pause on this page a little bit longer than the other slides because we did come up with a recommendation for the board to consider. Originally, we had talked about setting the dollar amount to increase teacher salary amount at $250 per FTE. If you remember, I had suggested it could be anywhere between $250 and $400 per FTE based on what our spending was. We do have some commitments that we can't quantify because they are not encumbered. We talked about that before. Those are reimbursements, purchasing card statements that come in after the fact, or any extra duty pay that have been assigned. In correspondence, the latest correspondence that we sent to you, there was some information about, I believe the terminology was absolutely necessary professional development that was just over $289,000. So we set the amount at $350 per FTE. That's, I think, the crux of the conversation this evening is what to establish that at. If we do set it at $350, it increases that 90% that I shared previously, which was the original plan, up to 95.4% of all of the new allocation would be going to teachers in this current year. And just to take the suspense out of it, the FY19 plan, which is, again, for consideration, the next agenda item on it, 100% of Fund 13 new allocation would go to teachers per the discussion that we've had. That's for the board to decide this evening.
So spoiler alert.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. Ms. Tweedy.
Okay, I just had a couple clarifying questions. When I look, okay, if we're voting on 100% and assuming that passes, if you look at the salary recommendation, it says if an amount greater than 7 million in the May 8th budget projection, then NST reconvenes. Why would they reconvene if 100%'s, can I just?
That's on the next agenda item.
No.
We're,
I'm not
Oh,
sure
okay.
what he's talking about here. That's what I'm just asking.
this is the 17-18, that's the only reason I was.
Yeah, but then he mentioned both right now.
I think I can answer the question. President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, so in the salary recommendation, that's a separate item. It's not related to the classroom site fund. So it is item D. The classroom site fund is item C. And so basically, in general, and this is some standard language that we've had, that is more related to M&O dollars, not classroom site fund. So it's a separate item within the salary recommendation that if we were to receive for some reason a windfall of $700,000 of additional M&O money, that NST would reconvene to reallocate or make a recommendation that the board would ultimately consider. It's not related to the classroom site fund.
It's not. Okay. Okay, thank you.
So what we're looking at for this item is specifically voting on reallocating an additional 5.4% to teachers, which would be the $350 per FTE. Am I understanding that correctly? So it only affects what was voted on last year, so it's a revision of what we did last year.
President Frank, then that is correct. And so because the plan was originally approved, we have some commitments that we have, so we wouldn't be able to obligate 100% of the new allocation due to those commitments that we made. But since the discussion has ensued over the past, I'll say, month or so, we have frozen any expenditures out of Fund 14 in anticipation of this decision that the board was going to, going to make. And we're recommending that we increase that to $350 for this year, and that would be paid when the performance pay is made to the teaching staff or those that are eligible for this. And that pay is currently scheduled for June 7th. So this decision is timely so that we can make the necessary arrangements to make sure that they get that in their performance paycheck.
And again, it's for all eligible certified who are eligible for classroom site fund.
That is correct.
Okay. Other questions from board members? Mrs. O'Brien?
Thank you. I just want to clarify, because I know that everybody is looking very closely at the numbers, but the original percentage that Mr. Miglerino had quoted, or not quoted, but says in the slideshow a couple slides back is 90.6%. And now the number that's on the slide, so there's the 90.6, and then if you go back to the slide you were on, it says 95.4%. I just want to make sure that's a 4.8%. I don't,
Correct,
and only because I don't want somebody to come back and say you promised it would be 5.4% over.
No, thank you. I didn't look at the number on the previous slide. I was sort of throwing out the estimate, but you are correct. It would be 4.8%.
Just so there's clarification for those of us listening at home, and that the dollar amount is the 350.
Okay, would be the
plus that.
350.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So with the remaining balance, I know we got some emails about summer work and PD. Is the remaining balance sufficient to cover that?
President Frank, it's not sufficient to cover what was planned, but it is enough. It's not quite enough to cover what was identified as absolutely necessary. It comes within $6,000 of that. And so I feel comfortable that we can continue to do some professional development through this summer. So anything that would be carried forward, and you'll see in the plan when we look at even the 19 plan, I put a token amount of carry forward, which it was $830 or something to that effect. But essentially, we would be using the carry forward to be able to perform the professional development this summer, which could include sometime through June, which is when our fiscal year ends, and then potentially sometime in the first part of next school year as well. So it will cross over to both fiscal years.
So then you would have funds available to do the professional development as planned, or most of it.
President
I just
Frank,
want to make sure I'm understanding correctly.
Not most, but some. So as it shows here, the balance for district initiatives would be $283,000. The plan for this summer was $607,000 with the professional development. So to put it in perspective.
Okay.
I have one more.
Okay, Mrs. O'Brien?
I did receive a communication specifically asking about the assessments that were going to be worked on in the summer. And it looked like from the spreadsheet that was sent about the work that would not continue over the summer, that would be something that is discontinued this summer, correct? Wanted to make sure I understand.
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, it was some that were determined essential, but the ones that were identified for you on the Thursday update were crucial. So in answer to your question, no.
But there'll be
would
no
not-
work done on assessments over the summertime.
I'm not going to say there would not be work done, but it would not be able to be done in the manner in which we have been able to do it in the past.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Galligan, for clarifying.
Are there other questions or comments from board members? Mrs. Fisher, did you have something
No,
you wish to
I
add?
believe mine is on the next one.
Okay. Well, then I'll go, hearing no other questions from board members, I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so the motion carries 5-0. And that brings us to item 6F, which would be to approve the FY19 Classroom Site Fund Plan. I need a motion.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the FY19 Classroom Site Fund Plan.
Okay, Mr. Miglerino? You're up again.
President Frank, members of the board, and Dr. Finch, let me slip through this here quickly. As we previously talked about the fiscal year 19 Classroom Site Fund, with those conversations that we had, there were some personnel and some capital purchases that were being funded out of the menu money in prior years. We have, in our budget plans, have moved that into M&O. This represents those amounts, so $268,000 worth of staffing expenses, an additional $625,000, which were related to our assessment and learning management system. Those would have to be moved into our M&O, which are part of our fiscal year 19 budget plan. You'll hear about that later in the evening. And that would allow us to then create a plan where 100% of all the new allocation is going to teachers out of the Classroom Site Fund for next year, 2018-19. So there's two factors that are at play here. One is the allocation per weighted student count is increasing to $423. That's causing about 0.5%, and I'm talking about on average, increase for our teachers. Then the increase to 100% of the menu money is another 1.5%. So the total combined increase, again, on average, is 2%. From the Classroom Site Fund for our employees that are eligible for this.
And that moves into their base pay. Is that correct? Or am I not correct in that?
The Fund 11 and 13 moves into their base pay. Fund 12, the performance pay, does not.
Right. Well, I was speaking of Fund 13.
Correct.
Okay. That does move into their base pay.
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Tweedy.
I had a few questions. So, I've received some emails regarding what the ARS and FICA contribution, which you estimated at $2 million, and then some people questioning if we received more than what you were projected. I'm just saying, if it's 100%, and say it didn't cost you that much, then that money would go to the employees anyway, right? As long as we're giving the employees 100%.
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, are you talking about all of the funds? Because there are some people that won't qualify for performance pay, so there is.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm talking about Fund 13 and 11, and then when some people were adding up, I don't have it in front of me. Do you remember the email we forwarded you when we were clarifying the amounts? What I'm saying is, you're estimating. So say your estimates are off. It doesn't matter because they're getting 100%.
Actually, President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, if for some reason there was an error in our calculation, it would just roll over. Those monies have to remain within those funds. And I would venture to say from the conversations that we had that whatever the carry forward would be would just be carried forward into, and it would be minimal because the only changes are going to be the classroom site fund is still based on prior year count. Remember our budget, and one of the reasons that we had to revise our budget, it's based on current year count. This is based on prior year count, so most of this information is known for us to make that allocation. And the actual amount, I think, because this is Jim font, on the far left-hand side, what we publish here is the amount per FTE, and there's even a smaller size font that notes that the amounts are less the benefit costs, which we are required to pay, and actually our employees probably appreciate us paying because one of those, the largest part of it, happens to be the Arizona State Retirement Contribution matching amount that goes into their account. So those amounts can be calculated, and there might be a rounding difference of some sort, but it's going to be minimal. We wouldn't allocate 100% in this year. Any carry forward that would be a result of that would just be applied to the future year, the next year.
Does that answer your question, Ms. Tweedy?
I think so. Why wouldn't you just pay it all out at the end? I mean, I don't really understand how this works.
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, the amount goes in their base salary, so it's in their contract that we issue to them. So instead of revising their contract for a penny or a nickel or $1 even, we just roll it into the next year and then it gets reallocated. It will be a small amount. Assuming you approve at 100%, it will be a very small amount that gets adjusted from year to year, especially when you divide it over 1,935 FTE.
So, because we've had a sizable carryover in years past, so that's not going to happen again?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, no. The sizable carry forward in the past has been from the district initiatives that did not get realized. When we allocate it to salary, it goes in their base pay, and there's a very good likelihood that all of that and then some will be spent.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Miglerino. Mrs. Fisher?
I think my question is along the lines the same with Darcy. Keeping it on this screen because I'm drawing a blank on the gentleman's name, but one of our teachers came and spoke with us, and we talked about trust and building trust, which was the email I forwarded to you and asked why would the calculations be different from what they were calculating. Now, when I look at this, you have this $830 for teacher development. That's your potential rollover. If I recall the spreadsheet that you had or the presentation you had at our last meeting, you had the same amount that you were projecting we may still need, the part that we're holding back. I believe now you have it at 289. Yeah, 283, 522. And I think that you had it in there so because we didn't know what was or wasn't. Did we solidify what that is? And so that's a known amount, and that's why we're not seeing it here now. Because I think that's where some of the confusion came, and it's not that you had it confused, but it was there for if there was anything of that amount realized that was rolled over, it would be for PD. And I think that's what kind of confused it. Is that what you removed, and then you put in the 830?
President Frank, Ms. Fisher, yes. So that $830 is a complete guess on my part, and it's based on the list of professional development activities that Dr. Galligan shared and the timing of those. Most of that, I think, can happen in June.
Okay.
There's a few dates that were in July, and so I just arbitrarily picked $830 just to show that there will be some carry forward, but it would be attributed to only those things that would be kind of the tail of us using this fund for that purpose from the existing carry forward amount. We don't know the exact amount, because, again, we don't encumber some of the expenses. But since we have frozen this for several weeks, we feel more confident as time goes on that what we do know is going to be realized.
Okay, I just wanted it clarified in a meeting in the recording, just in case the individual who inquired is not here. so that they can watch and see that was what that was. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Fisher. Mrs. O'Brien? Mrs. Ordway, any questions for Mr. Miglerino? Okay, well, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Tweedy, did you vote?
Aye.
Okay. All right, so the motion carries 5-0. Okay. And this brings us to our last action item of the evening, item G. We'll have a motion, and then we do have one speaker for public comments on this. So first, I need a motion.
I move that the governing board accept the administration's recommendation to approve the negotiated solution team salary recommendation for 2018-19.
Second.
Okay. So we do have a public speaker, Maria Leyva. If you'll please step up to the podium.
So President Frank, Governing Board, Superintendent Finch, guests. I'm just here to kind of put yourself with us in the room on Tuesday during our negotiated solutions team meeting. And I just want it on the record because right now we have a paper to read from the original proposal, which was just a skeleton and something to launch from, had classroom teachers receiving a 13%, other certified receiving a 7%, classified receiving 6%, and admin receiving 4%. DVEA leadership met over the weekend. We proposed taking 1% away from classroom teachers, bringing us from 13 to 12. The remaining balance was moved over to the non-teachers, bringing them from a 7 up to a 12. And the remaining money from that would be shifted over to classified, giving them an additional 1%, and only 40,000 was needed for a full percentage point for them. Because that's how we negotiate when all three employee groups are there. And we know that it takes a village to run a school. It takes the bus drivers to get them to school so that we can teach them, and then people to help pick up afterwards. And we are all in this together. We just could not handle, speaking from the perspective of DVA, we just could not handle that disparity. In the end, what you're seeing is a 12% classroom teachers, but that does include our 301. The non-teaching certified will receive a 10% with their performance pay moving up to $2,200 from a minimum of $1,400. Classified receiving 6.5%. But we do take issue with the half percentage being taken out of classified and moved over into admin. We don't think that is right, but that's a classified issue. And lastly, my request would be to amend the motion that the board will approve after the employees have a chance to meet, discuss, and approve the salary proposal. It's a little odd that DVA is having its meeting tomorrow to discuss and get input. We haven't looped this out as in past practices, past years. So we're asking you either with that motion or to table it until next meeting, until the employees have a chance to discuss this in a forum where they feel free to speak their own mind and provide their own input. So that's my request to you, the board. Please consider that motion to amend it and wait for the employees to approve the salary proposal before the board does. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, and thank you, Maria. So we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. I'm assuming we have a presentation from Mr. Miglerino. So why don't we start there and see where we end up.
I saw it earlier, so I know that we have it. So President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, as that is getting pulled up, I hope. somebody can knock on the glass and see if Dave's awake. I just wanted to comment quickly about kind of some of the timing of all of this. We were waiting for a lot of information from the legislature to be able to complete the work of the negotiated solution teams, NST as we consider them, and that information didn't become available to us in a timely manner, and it was a significant amount of money that had us waiting for that information to be able to make sure that we knew what we could include. In addition to that, we're at the end of the school year. We have not yet issued classified appointments to our classified staff. We are hoping that we can issue that one time with a salary increase after the board has acted. So in order to give the board the greatest amount of flexibility, we did add this item on the agenda as an action item so that the board can consider it either tonight, table it, or amend the motion to include that it would be approved pending any other action that you would want to see done, including employee groups potentially voting or ratifying this. I will say that our classified group has voted and are in support of it. We do have support from the building leadership team at this point in time. There is a footnote to that I must disclose. They are hoping that not only the salary increase as presented that we're going to present to you will get approved, but they also have a request for some additional staffing. That's not a salary increase, but it does have a budget impact, and I'll share that the details of that with you at the end of the presentation, maybe. I would be remiss not to recognize the group, those members on the NST, for the work that they put in, and I wanted to specifically recognize the certified group because they were very creative in the suggestions that they had about trying to create more parity amongst the salary increases. And as Ms. Leyva mentioned, it did allow us to have, it was the recommendation as we have it written, and I understand the language is a little bit cumbersome to get through. It's specific that way so that it's prescriptive, right? We know exactly what to do in applying it, but it's not easy to follow because it's prescriptive to us. It's not written for the general public. But because of their, I'll just say generosity, it allows the money to be more equally distributed amongst all of the employee groups. And so I'll get to the details of that. So just real quickly, the NST process, 3 members from each of the employee groups, including our building leadership team, classified group, our certified group, as well as our administrators, district level administrators. We kind of chair the group. And per the language that you have approved, it is to focus on salary benefits and employee rights and employment conditions. Just as a reminder, the benefit recommendation has already been approved for next year, and so we are in the midst of open enrollment for that currently. And then per the language, each group then conducts however they go about ratifying or getting support for the recommendation from their respective constituency group. So that's kind of the process. We did meet last Tuesday to craft the language that is before you. We weren't able to finalize it because we want to model what we were writing to make sure that it has the exact financial impact. We met for a little over an hour on May 8th, and we did a lot of work in that short amount of time. It took us 2 days to actually solidify what was conceptualized in that meeting. We only had an hour due to some of the other meetings that we had on May 8th. And you can see that was not the first time we met. So the group has been meeting since the beginning of the school year, and we've been having these discussions throughout the school year, which is typical. We also have additional meetings as needed. The process does require for us to debrief at the end to make sure that we understand if there's any improvements that we need to be thinking about for a future year. I've identified the NST members here to give them credit for the amount of time that they've committed to this, and these are difficult decisions in terms of how to make sure that we're doing something that's everybody can support, and so I wanted to recognize the committee here. New this year that I don't have a slide in regards to, we did have the budget committee as well. Essentially, what their recommendation was is they wanted to see significant salary increases for our employees, and I think this is what is captured in the salary recommendation that we wanted to share with you this evening. So here is the language, but before going through each of the specifics here, and I think this was shared by Ms. Leyva, but essentially what this works out to be is a 10% increase for our certified teaching staff, and an additional 2% for that staff out of the classroom site fund. Remember, we mentioned 0.5% due to the increase in the allocation, and then the 1.5% from what the board just approved by moving 100% of Fund 13 in there. So our certified group would see a 12%, and they asked for that to be a percentage increase. We have done percentage and flat combinations amongst the employee groups. Their request this year was to make that a 100% percentage increase, 12% for each of those that would be in that category. The other professional staff, and just, I know I leave out a number of people when I say this, so I'm not trying, this is not a comprehensive list, but these are our speech, OT, PT, psychologists, counselors are in this group as well. Due to the certified group sharing in the raise that would have been allocated equally if we were to do the salary increase the way we would, that it's prescribed to us. They were able to increase that percentage from not just the 3% that we were proposing to all employees, but they were to add 7% to that, so they would be getting a 10% raise, which is similar to what the certified staff is getting. The certified staff is getting it from the governor's plan, the 20 by 2020 plan. This money for the other professional staff would be coming from our M&O dollars, and specifically that's due to the fact that we are getting an inflationary increase and the restoration of district, partial restoration of district additional assistance. So that's where that money is coming from. The difference being is this group does not qualify for the classroom site fund, so they don't get the additional 2% as it relates to the classroom site fund. But the certified group asked once again for a consideration that their performance pay be established at a flat $2,200 per FTE in addition to the 10% increase. So it's actually a little more than 10% when you add that additional amount into it. And that worked out, it's not insignificant. That $2,200 is about $200,000 in additional money. Not all of that has to come from M&O because we were paying a flat $1,250, or will be paying a flat $1,250 per FTE this year. So it's just the delta between the $1,250 from this year and the $2,200. But essentially, we can say to that other professional group that you're getting a 10% raise, just like the teachers are getting 10% raise. They're just getting an additional 2% because of the classroom site fund, which the other professional staff does not qualify for. So that's the certified group. The classified group, again, we started off at 3% because the certified group was not, or was generous enough to share in the 3% that would have been allocated to that group. That provided another 4% for this group for a total of 7%. But through the discussions, that would leave no additional dollars for the admin exempt group. And just as a reminder, the admin exempt group goes all the way down to our coordinator level of the positions. And so it only took 0.5% from the classified group to be able to provide another 1% for the admin group, and we'll get to that. But so on average, the dollars that, and this gets very confusing, by the way, so just bear with me, if you will. On average, we allocated 6.5% of an increase to all classified staff, but we didn't distribute that 6.5% uniformly to everybody. The reason for that is we are dealing with salary compression due to minimum wage increases. So those people that are currently making $10.50 an hour, we're not going to give them a salary increase because we're obligated to give them a salary increase. We're not giving them a salary increase as a result of this action, because we're obligated to give them a salary increase on January 1st from $10.50 to $11. So they'll get a 50-cent raise because minimum wage goes up to $11 on January 1st. But the dollars that would have gone to that group of individuals, we actually reapplied that to those that are making more than $12 an hour, because eventually minimum wage goes to $12 an hour, and there is no differentiation between all the salary groups that are under $12 an hour and those that were going to be above $12 an hour if we were to uniformly give a salary increase, yet the minimum wage creeps up to $12 an hour. So what we're trying to do is push dollars that would have been allocated to those lower salary amounts to the higher salaried employees that are classified employees, so that they are creating a little more distance from the people that are chasing them with bigger salary increases due to minimum wage. I don't know if that made sense, but it did in my mind. Please.
Get to the end of something like this and we have questions. So what's the reason for giving the bus drivers $1 an hour instead of any of the increases below?
President Frank, Ms. Tweedy, that's a great question. This is a recommendation that came from the Transportation Department themselves to add $1 per hour to their hourly wage, which was greater than the increase of 6.5% on average.
Okay, but here's the issue. What's the bus driver starting salary?
Currently is $12.63 per hour.
Okay, so if they went with the same increase that the people that were making $12 an hour, they would get a 10% increase. And what percentage would it be with a dollar, like 8%?
The 10.3 is an average, so it ranges anywhere from 11% to 7% within that group. So the $1 gives them
8%.
Correct.
It's 12, right?
Yeah, $12.63.
So they're going to get a lower raise than the other people who are making $12 an hour to solve our bus driver shortage problem?
Again, this was a request that they made, not knowing that we were originally only having a 3% increase for them to consider.
Do you think this is a good way to solve the bus driver shortage problem?
I think it actually will help in terms of them getting an increase. I don't know that it solves the problem. No.
I think it actually, I think giving them a lower increase than other people who make $12 an hour because they have a shortage at that position doesn't make any sense at all.
And again, that recommendation came before the decision to be able to increase the amount due to the reallocation of the raises.
What, do we know what our peer districts are paying starting rate for bus drivers? Because we have the increase that they approved, and the suggested increase $1 an hour, but we also have to look at who are we competing with and what are they paying if we don't want to have a bus driver shortage.
President Frank, yes, and we're anxiously awaiting. Remember, we are still working on a salary comparison analysis, and we're still waiting for a draft copy of that. I hope to have that in the next week or so to have some of that comparison. We know that, for example, we're at $12.63. Currently, Peoria is paying $13.61, I believe, but we pay for a lot of days that are non-work days. So you can't just look at hourly salary, the hourly rate of pay. You have to look at what their total compensation would be based on the number of days that would be in their employment agreement as well. And so we're doing that analysis in that salary comparison report. So we'll have more information shortly.
Okay, so I guess my concern is that we don't want to just pay what everyone else is paying. We also want to pay more if we're going to be competitive, if we're going to attract. Since we have a shortage, we want to close that gap. So, so those are my thoughts. Ms. Tweedy, do you have further or other board members? Further questions?
Go last.
I have a 10. I'll just win it. I would like to see a better plan for addressing the bus driver situation. This to me doesn't make any sense.
Okay, do you have, all right, so if you would like to continue.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miglorino.
So we took the savings from not only the $10.50 people, but also from the bus drivers, because we had that costed out separately when we were talking about different budget priorities. And those, both of those dollars got reapplied to the $12 per hour. If we were to make a change to any of this, we would have to recalculate all of that, which we can certainly do. But from $10.50 to $12 an hour, it actually works out to be an average of 6.9%. Again, that's an average within that range because there's a flat dollar amount. So 50% of the increase gets converted to a flat 41 cents per hour. And then the percentage increase calculates at 3.24%. On average, that works out to be a 6.9% salary increase for that group. For the 12, and then we would adjust the hiring schedule by 3% for those employees within that range or within those ranges. And then finally, for those employees that are classified employees that are $12 and more, we're taking the dollars from the $10.50 per hour employees and the bus drivers. We applied that to that group, which, by the way, is about 50% of our classified employees currently make $12 or more. And in dollars, not in bodies, and that works out to be a flat 84 cents per hour and 4.5%. And again, on average, that works out to be about 10.3% for that group based on that calculation. And then, I'm sorry, was there a question related to that?
No.
Okay. I saw you reaching for the mic.
I'm just adjusting.
And then finally, the administrative exempt group, again, started at 3% with the, I'll just call it the revenue sharing. The 0.5% from the classified group was able to provide a 4% increase to the admin exempt group. They also have a 50% flat 50% percentage increase, so it works out to be $1,454 and a flat increase, and just under 2% at 1.98. So there's a pretty wide range for the increases within that group, just because that starts at $40,000 and goes up to much more than that when you talk about all those that are in that group. I mentioned already previously, but kind of in a different format this year, we're actually identifying the amounts within the different funds that qualify for the Classroom Site Fund eligible employees. So we figured this would allow us to track this year over year. So these are the same amounts that you saw previously in the FY19 plan, with, again, 100% of Fund 13 being allocated at the $2,810 that you see there. And then finally, this is just some standard catch-all language that, hey, if we get $700,000, we want NST wants to come back together and decide what to do about that. The reason for the $700,000 amount, that's about 0.5%. Anything less than that would just roll into carry forward into a future year. But if we got to an amount that was $700,000 or more, that we would want to get together and see if there was modifications that we would want to make within that year. And I think that's, so just real quickly, just kind of a recap of where we're at from a budget projection standpoint. So you can see some of the revenue changes. Again, a reduction of students, some Group B weight changes. So this is for next year's budget, right? You can see the inflation increase there. The teacher-specific legislative pay, that's from the governor's 10%. Change in Teacher Experience Index, or TEI, up just $17,000. Our override increases because all of those increases got applied to the base, so there's an additional amount from our M&O override. Our cash accounts are adjusting downward. Our district additional assistance allocation to capital was a little greater at $2.6 million. And then based on our current month carry forward, we're going to be down $280,000. So net new revenue is $10.7 million. On the expense side, you can see there's a lot of changes here, including the teacher salary increase, the raises that we just talked about, changes in staffing due to changing populations, the increase to the health insurance that we talked about previously, the use of the VSEB, I got to remember, it's Valley Schools Employee Benefit Group now, with a G, not a T, the reserves to cover some of those expenses. So just about $9.9 million worth of expense changes, and so that includes the raises that were just previously shared. So we have about $800,000 that has been unallocated, and then so here's the list. And yes, NST does know how to number. I know you're going to say, hey, you jump in at number 3. Well, all the salary increases were also numbered. I left them numbered the way they were just so that we would have them as a reference. But a full-time district athletic director has been talked about. It's not included in those budget numbers. And so what the running balance does is takes from that $800,000 that you saw on the previous page and just starts deducting each of these items off of that. The additional school-based administrative support there, $214,000. That's the footnote that I mentioned, that the Deer Valley Building Leadership Team is wanting to know if that is going to be supported by the board in addition to the salary increase. Then they are supportive of the salary increase. To them, they want to see both of those things happen. Hard to fill nurses is on the list. I know that our folks in human resources have been trying to fill positions, making that hard to fill. There's an expense related with that, but feels that we would be able to recruit and retain our nursing staff, which are becoming more and more difficult to staff. We have considered a substitute teacher pay increase from $85 to $90. There's a slight increased cost for that. The Prop 206 classified salary compression, because the raise got so significant, I'm going to say that that actually has been taken care of, at least in some small part. So we did not cost that out, but it was prioritized in that order. And then finally, if we were to do district reorganization, we could afford at least going to that item. We're about $35,000 short based on our projections today. But we could also forego that and put the rest of it into our contingency just because of the volatility of having to deal with current year funding. So that's kind of where we stand with the budget, is that we can afford the raises that are in the salary recommendation and a couple of the items that are on this list of prioritized items. We don't have to make the decision about this list. I just wanted to give you some perspective that we do have the budget balanced with the salary increases that we were suggesting previously. And then finally, just the note here, the results-based funding from this year, $1.1 million, we still need to write some language, and we have been talking about a couple different options, including maybe some form of stipend for our employees, a loyalty stipend for years of service or something along those lines. The language requires that the results-based funding help replicate the success where the schools that earn these dollars actually, for schools that enjoyed the success, you can replicate that with these dollars. The thought being there is if that we have the continuity of service from continuing teachers, that we can do a better job getting results like we did at the schools that actually qualified for this. The one caveat here is at least the majority of the money has to be paid to school-based staff. That's another criteria that's in the statute. Again, we don't have language around that. It's something that we're still working on. So that's really kind of in a nutshell. There was a graphic that I originally included and has been shared with people. I think it does help illustrate that the certified teaching staff would get a 12% raise, again 10% plus the 2% from the classroom site fund bump. Other professional certified staff, non-teaching I'll call them, and I don't mean that in an offensive way, just to delineate, they would receive the 10% plus the change to the flat performance pay amount. Classified staff would on average see a 6.5% with a differentiated distribution of that to deal with salary compression, and administration would be 4%. As the board has indicated previously, this can be approved as written. It can be approved pending ratification of the employee groups. It can be tabled for the next meeting. There are a couple options. We just wanted to give the board the most flexibility to be able to make a decision tonight one way or the other.
And thank you very much, Mr. Miglerino, and thank you to the NST committee for members for all of your hard work on this. Mrs. Ordway.
Jim, for food services and I think print shop and community ed, with the raises that are approved, is there a certain way that they would get paid differently than others?
President Frank, Ms. Ordway, no, we would, the dollar amounts that you see are only the M&O costs.
Okay.
But we do have several of our staff members that are paid from other sources than M&O. Food service is a self-sufficient operation. And so we would have to program in that those raises, so what we have done in the past is whatever raise we're giving to any Deer Valley employee, we give them to all, and then we have to figure out a way to make sure that we can afford that moving forward. So in the case of food service, they would receive a 6.5% raise just as any other classified employee, and we would have to make sure that those labor costs were included in our projections for future years. It would be no different than within community ed or even some of our grant-funded positions.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that they could afford the raises because they are, kind of self-sufficient.
Yeah, I'm not declaring they can afford them. I'm going to say that we will work out a plan so that
Well,
they are
okay, so they
affordable.
may not be able to afford them, but they will receive them in some way. Okay. I just wanted to make sure about that because we all want really good lunches. The other question I have is on the list that we don't have to decide on tonight, where it says the counselor pay adjustment, and I know you didn't mention that, and I don't know if these are in any particular order, perhaps they are. When we've adjusted the raises, and NST met, is there any kind of a opportunity yet to talk perhaps about a salary schedule or not? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, stop. You're making me forget what I was going to say. No, I'm kidding.
Salary schedule.
Yeah, I knew where I was. That was a joke. Anyway, so Jim, is there any talk about that yet, or are we still too far in an early stage? Because I believe that the base salary from the state is going to be, we're going to keep being fed. So perhaps we could do that or not. I don't know. I'm just asking.
President Frank, Ms. Wardway, there has been conversation about the desire for a salary schedule. I think, and this is my personal opinion, by the way.
And that's all I need is your personal opinion.
I think the desire is to have some certainty about salary increases.
Mm-hmm.
I think the model that we have actually can maybe even be more more dependable in terms of salary increases if we are guaranteed the raises
Right.
that are in the commitment that we have from the legislature. But unfortunately, the past decade, we haven't had those dollars, and so it gets attributed that we don't have a process that
Right.
allocates these funds well, and that the salary schedule is the reason for that. That's not the case. The reason that we haven't been able to give a raise is because we haven't been able to enjoy any increases in the amount of money per student.
Right. I've lived that 10 years, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the next question is, when do you NST met, the three groups met, everybody was all in agreement with the division or dividing, I didn't mean like you were divided, dividing the percentages up from the money that we're getting. So you said that BLT and DVESPA already have put it out to their people. So we're waiting, and DVA has not in an official capacity put it out, but I can tell you on Facebook it's been out. And other social media, and obviously you're sitting here. So, so how would that be communicated out? It would just be however the association, or is there actually, I mean, how will we push that out? I don't know if that's you or Dr.
So
Finch want to answer that.
President Frank and Ms. Ordway, the way the language reads is that each employee group is responsible for their own determination of ratification of the of what's being recommended. My understanding is that DVEA plans to hold a vote tomorrow. So one of the options the board would have is they could approve this pending ratification from all the employee groups, and then we can do that. If that is agreed upon by the employee groups, then we could move forward without any further board action. Or again, the board could just table it, and we could bring back the results of what we learned from the other employee groups because we have a meeting next week, a week from today.
Right, we have. That's what I was going to say. If we would be able to get that information, when DVA pushes the information out, however you push it out, does it go to all of the certified employees, or just the members?
I don't know the answer to that.
Could we have? Oh.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes, I can. Did you want me to? Okay. Will you push the information out to only members or to all certified teachers that would be considered teachers?
No, the information was posted well on Facebook, which is since gone. It's in the proposal, and it's in our constitution that for ratification that it's members at the meeting tomorrow.
Okay, so it is only members.
Yes.
Okay. So then would the district then give the information out to non-members, or do we even know who's who?
President Frank, Ms. Ordway, we don't have a process for that.
Okay.
For communicating it to the larger masses, other than I guess the meetings like this. It's not prescribed in the NST process,
Okay.
but as you're asking that question, I'm thinking that we could. There's no reason we can't. It doesn't say that we should, but it doesn't say we shouldn't either.
Right, so at least, at the very least, this information as it is written, not approved, could go on a portal for all employees to see, or not?
That is correct. It could.
Okay. I just want to make sure that when we finally decide what it is we're going to decide, that all of our employees have had an opportunity to weigh in to see what's going on, and that's it.
Okay. Mrs. Fisher.
I can wait. Darcy had her hand up first.
Okay. Ms. Tweedy.
Mr. Miglerino, can you go back to the admin slide? Are you proposing a 4% for all admin and exempt?
So the NST recommendation is that on average, it would be a 4% increase. And it would be a flat dollar amount of $1,454 for each position. So that's by FTE, in case we have somebody that's part-time. We have to prorate it. And then it's a percentage increase of 1.98% in addition to that $1,454.
And the reason for this is to address salary compression?
Actually, this is in language that we have the flat versus percentage increase. It's not to deal with compression as much as it is to help the bottom of the pay schedule more than the top of the pay schedule. So the flat percentage, anybody that's below the average within the group, the flat percentage helps them more because it's a fixed dollar amount.
Do you mean the flat dollar increase?
So the flat dollar increase. So, for example, we have some people in here that could be, let's say, $45,000 a year on a 12-month contract. So they're going to get $1,454, but we also have some employees in this group that could be making $85,000 a year. They still get $1,454, but it's a smaller percentage, obviously, than of an increase than the $45,000 position.
So why do you think all exempt needs a 4% raise in admin? Because our admin, here's where I'm going with this. Well, first I did my own job study this weekend, and I pulled up all the admin schedules from our neighboring districts because I've been waiting for that information. But the other thing is two things. When I was out, trying to obviously advocate for increased funding for our schools and speaking to our representatives, it's not really fun speaking to the representatives when you're on a governing board and what they question is why the governing board is approving that our teachers have the lowest the lowest average salary compared to our peers, and there's a 4% discrepancy because we have $45,022 and the average for our peers is $46,837, so that's a 4% discrepancy. So if we gave, and then they questioned that we were higher than our peers on admin spending. So, and it's just embarrassing. So I'm trying to, so I went back and I looked. So we have, okay, a 4% difference that we would have to make up just to pay our teachers the same as our peers. And right now, assuming they got 12%, and Peoria does 11.34, that's less than 1%, so that doesn't make up the 4%. And if Dysart does 10, that's 2%, so that doesn't make up the 4%. So in all likelihood, we would still be lower than our peers. Then I went over and I was looking at Peoria's proposing a 3.2% increase to administration. We're proposing a 4%. So we're going to make our numbers look even worse by next year if we do this. And I'm embarrassed. I mean, I don't even want to go out and talk to these people about, because we have to fix this before, I mean, we can't just say you're doing a bad job at funding us and do stuff like this. It makes us look ridiculous. I looked up our neighboring districts, so here's what I found. There are some admins that are underpaid in our district, but not most. The elementary principal in Deer Valley appears to be paid $15,000 less than the starting pay for the director. 11 of the district's salary schedules I pulled show campus administrators make the same as directors. The starting salary for Deer Valley's directors are more than Peoria, Paradise Valley, and Gilbert. They're close to Chandler, and they're lower than Dysart and Scottsdale. I'm not interested in emulating Scottsdale. It's also worth noting that we were one of the few districts without a salary cap on the director position. I pulled 12 districts, and only 5 of them didn't have a cap on the director's position, and we were one. So we don't even know if all our directors are at the low end of that salary. So the average principal salary in Deer Valley, though, was lower. So the only group I could determine we don't probably pay, which is consistent, are the people that are at the schools. I can't say what the other board members would do, but I think you would have to bring these positions to us individually and make the case that they need a 4% raise. I mean, there is no way. If we approve this how it is now, we're still going to have the lowest paid teachers and the highest and higher admin than our peers. Our Auditor General report will be a disaster.
So I want to make sure I understood this correctly, that for the raise, the 4% for admin, did you say that there was a 0.5% that was taken from another group? I want to make sure I understood that correctly.
Yeah, President Frank, originally was that 4% would be shared with both the certified non-teaching staff and the classified group. That 4% grew to 7% for the other certified other professional group, and the classified said, hey, of our 4, if we give a 0.5%, that would give 1% to the admin. So instead of there being a 3% versus 7%, there'd be a 6.5% to 4% difference between the classified and the admin.
I would like to see some differentiation within the admin group as well, with a greater share going to the campus leaders who are at the school sites. And I'm also, I'm not comfortable taking money from our lowest paid group to shift to our highest paid group.
To that point, Ms. Frank, can we have an understanding of everyone that falls within the administrative exempt group? I think that directors, building leadership team administrators are in there, but I don't know that there is a full understanding of all the types of employees that fall under the administrative/exempt category. Could we?
That was actually my next question, so thank you for asking it.
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, so it's everybody that's exempt 4 through 10, including all of the building principals and school-related administration. There have been several comments about different percentages in that, and we do analyze this and have information regarding this. Just as a reminder, our administrative costs in our district are higher as a result of a retiree benefit that we offer to all employees, but it is charged to the administrative category. That was over $3 million in fiscal year 17, so that there were some dollar amounts that were being quoted to that. And that's a benefit that goes to all employees, but it shows up as an administrative cost. Not all of our comparable districts offer that or have a modification of what we offer to our employees. We no longer offer that as well, but we do honor it for continuing employees that have at least 15 years of service.
But I think, Ms. Tweedy, and you correct me if I'm wrong, you were referring to the actual salaries that are posted, not to the overall administrative costs?
I was saying our salaries in director position and the fact that we don't have a cap on it. I mean, I just don't know how we don't know that that's part of the problem too. I would like to see the backup on proving that this total problem. I would just like to see the backup that demonstrates this is the sole cost, the sole reason that our admin spending's higher. It could be part of the reason.
Yeah, so we can provide that information to the board. It would be based on fiscal year 17 data if we're going to make comparisons to other districts, because that's the most readily available information, most current information from other districts that we would have access to.
What amount did you say it was, though, the insurance benefit?
It was just over $3 million in fiscal year 17.
3 million? And then if we divide that by our whole budget, we could see what percent of the admin that would be?
Yes. In fact, depending on how fast my fingers work
So
here.
if I divide that by...
that actually works out to be, so it was $3.1 million in OPEB costs.
Okay.
For just that year. So our general administration for our district is 2.1%. Our comparable districts, it was 1.4%. But if you were to take the $3.1 million out, our 2.1% ends up being up 0.6% compared to 1.4 amongst all the comparable districts. But in all fairness, I know for sure Peoria also has an OPEB liability that they have, and so does Paradise Valley. So to take our $3.1 million off, it would be unfair to not take it out of their average. But it takes our percentage of general administration, which would be typically district office expense, from 2.1 to 0.6% by just removing that $3.1 million.
Yeah, I would like to see that compared with other districts too. But like I said, I would like to see, and to the point, I know some of the exempt are lower paid than some of the positions I'm talking about. But that's why I'm saying I'd like to see the case for who needs a 4% raise. Give everyone.
And I know this is not going to be a popular statement. I know for a fact that we are not significantly higher in administration on a per salary basis, because I've seen the salaries of other administrators in other districts, not just Phoenix Union, which is out of hand all the way around, but in others, in Glendale, and in Phoenix, and in Peoria. and they're not significantly more. But the problem I have more with the line of question, and I'm sorry, this is not, especially in a room full of teachers, not going to be a popular statement, saying that an administrator does not deserve a salary increase because there's potentially administrators that make a lot of money. That's like saying, well, a teacher doesn't need an increase because there's potentially teachers that make a lot of money. And that would be stupid. I would never say that. I do every year, I ask for a spreadsheet of all salaries with an employee number so I don't know who it is. I just know what they do. And I see, and I look at to see if there's any significant disparities. And I will tell you, in the 3.5 years I've been doing that, there was only 2 that I found, and they were secretaries. They weren't in any other group. And I just think I know that when an individual here at the district office took a director position, it paid less than I made as a manager in another district. I've watched some of our salaries, positions, even as I have applied for positions, some of our directors make significantly less than a starting salary is even being offered in, say, Dysart or the one I just saw in Kyrene last week. So I just think to say we want to pick on this group and say some of them don't deserve a raise, so we are going to scrutinize every single person, I just think it is so disrespectful to our employees. Our principals do make less than other principals. Our managers make less than other districts. Our coordinators make less than other districts. We are not significantly higher, even if you look at the salary schedules.
So
I understand that. I've looked at these. And they are significantly. This isn't necessarily what they're hired at. I'm talking about what they're making. And that's why I'm saying, so, but do we need to go employee by employee? Is that what we're going to do? Every single employee?
So you support differentiating the pay for classified, but not doing it for...
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Well, that's what I said, and you're saying it's disrespectful. It's not disrespectful.
No, that's not what I said. You said you want to go over every individual administrator.
No, I said you need to submit the case by range, not I'm sorry. If you thought I wanted everybody's name, I wanted the dollar amount they were making.
Okay.
Like a
So-
salary rate.
I'm not going to argue that. I just think it's extremely disrespectful that we are going to scrutinize one group by choice and no others.
So
as far as moving forward, I think I want us to adopt something soon, but I've been pulling numbers, and my concern is the bus drivers. Because if they do the $1 that's in the proposal, they will be 30 cents less than if they took the 10.3%. That will put them, the 10.3 will put them 30 cents over Peoria, and we'll still be 89 cents below Paradise Valley. And I'm just looking at starting salaries only. So that is significantly concerning to me, is that our bus drivers, Peoria is currently hiring a couple. Paradise Valley is, they don't have a lot of positions open for bus drivers either. We have a ton. That needs to be addressed before we can move forward. And just as an FYI, Phoenix Union is thinking about doing their own transportation. So, then we know they have money to throw at everybody. So I just think that needs to be addressed somehow, and I don't know if we can address it and still vote on it, or if we need to have that corrected first. And then as far as administrators, once again, Mr. Millerino, at the end of the year, I would like to have the same file I request every year, and I'll look at it as I always do, but I'm comfortable with the 4%.
So I would just like to clarify, I certainly never said, and excuse me, did not hear Ms. Tweedy say administrators don't deserve a raise. My concern was shifting money from classified over to admin, especially when you look at bus drivers. And also what I heard Ms. Tweedy say is the difference between what teachers are making here versus what they would still be making in other places, that we're not closing that gap. The reality is, it's the law of supply and demand. We have a shortage of teachers. We have, I think I heard 29 sped teachers and no applicants for those positions. We have a shortage of bus drivers. We heard from Mr. Militano. So when we're looking at how we're divvying up the money, we really need to be mindful of being competitive with our wages for the positions for which we have shortages. I can't think of any other business model where, if there was a shortage of engineers, do you think Honeywell would be paying their engineers less than Intel? Not if they wanted to attract the best engineers. So it's not a matter of picking on admin, to my mind, or saying, oh, they don't deserve a raise because they make a lot of money. That's not what anyone said. When we're looking at how we're dividing it up, how are we going to address the areas in which we have a shortage? And Mrs. Ordway?
Can I just point out,
I called on Mrs. Ordway. She had raised her
can
hand.
I just point out one more thing, is that, yes, there's a shortage of teachers. We can take our highest paid employee in this district, which is the superintendent. There is also 7 local superintendent positions open. So we can pay for quality, or we can cut it until we're stuck with, I don't know, we could, I heard Denise Birdwell just left Scottsdale. Think about it.
Well, I would not use that as an example of...
So, Ms. Frank, can I go
Mrs.
now?
Ordway, go ahead. I think
So,
there's some
Mr.
other issues there.
Migdaleno, to the point of admin in comparable districts, we would then have to make sure that a title and a task matches. All directors are not the same everywhere. So I don't know how you would do that. I'm sure you can. With the percentage that was negotiated in the negotiated solution team, sometimes when we get the recommendation from the teams, the associations that are charged with doing these negotiations, they may not look like what we think they should. However, when they are the ones that are negotiating, they must have reasons for it. So I don't want to call on anyone, but there's Steve that's there, and then Marshall is also part of the bus driver. So I think that, we want to be trusted, we want to respect, but then when we have our associations going into these negotiations and come out with recommendations, not saying that we're going to follow everything exactly, but we should possibly find out why they wanted to give that percentage to wherever they gave it. So there is that part with our negotiated solution team, because if we're just going to change things around because we don't think it looks good, then maybe we don't need to have it set up the way it is right now. I know that there's reasons for what they do, and I just want to make sure that we respect that. But the admin part is not just coordinators or directors. Are there not secretaries or some kind of other employees included in that exempt group, Jim? I know you're working.
Sorry, trying to calculate some things. I didn't hear the question.
So in that admin group, it is not just the director. Would it also be a secretary, or is it only director, coordinator, principal?
Coordinator, manager, director, principal, assistant principal, and
not even
deputy superintendent and superintendent would all be in that category.
Okay, so that list that Mrs. Fisher was referring to, I think all of us would like to have that list so we could maybe do our own comparisons. I don't know.
Okay. So I'm just going to interject here. We've had quite a bit of discussion on this item. I'm not sure that we're ready to reach a consensus. I personally don't feel comfortable approving it prior to the employee groups ratifying it. So I'm wondering if we would like to table this.
I actually
Or-
have a few questions.
Okay, I'm sorry,
so-
Mrs. O'Brien. I
but-
didn't mean to like stifle. I just want to be mindful and
I
respectful
know
of
we've
the
been talking
time.
about it for quite a while, but except for the
Okay.
one question, I haven't had
Okay,
an
go
opportunity
ahead.
to ask some of my other ones. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then, so I'd like to second or triple the motion to have that list of the administrative exempt positions that fall within that category. And if I could, to Mrs. Ordway's point, maybe invite, I apologize, Mr. Lund, if you wouldn't mind being put on the spot to talk about the negotiation solutions team and how, please, whichever microphone they'd prefer to have you at.
You can just sit right there, right?
My name is Steve Lund, President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch. The team over the last 5 years that I've been participating in it has most often worked together to try to find something that's a reasonable use of whatever dollars we might have. When we got some of the 1, 2, 3 money, it was divided up a little bit different. I believe the certified gave back a little bit toward classified. I believe also the administrative gave back a little bit from what would have been normally their percentage. So again, on this time, our thinking was with the certified offering some percentage back toward us to help, our situation with the compression and the monies that are available to us as a group. We also wanted to make a little bit available to the administrative to try to, show a little good gesture that was given to us. It has been in the past that there have been a few years where administration got no raise. And some of that was directed from previous boards. Some members were on those boards at that time. But, I'm not chastising any of that decision. I understand what some of those thoughts are. But just to summarize, it was kind of a good faith kind of a thing. We were being shared. Things were being shared with us, and we wanted to try to share also to, help all of us. Does that answer the?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Lund, for providing that background information. And then, sorry, I have several notes in here. Jim, on the slide prior to this, item B, to the certified non-teaching and or other professional staff, that would include the categories of counselors, speech therapists, occupational therapists. Is that correct?
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, that is correct.
And the $2,200 performance pay, that is similar to what our certified staff get, so it's not put in the base. It is a performance pay that changes on an annual basis.
That is correct. It performance pay, and for comparative purposes, this is for next year. The plan that was approved tonight for those that are classroom site fund eligible was $2,810.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I apologize. There was one other thing that was asked for, and I wanted to make sure we got it. I will email you if I think about it. Sorry.
Okay. Well, while you're thinking, I do have an additional question. Do nurses fall into the certified non-teaching or other professional staff? I want to make sure no one's being left out.
President Frank, yes, they do.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Ordway.
I just have a question. So we have 2 of the 3 associations that have already voted for their proposal. We have one going out tomorrow. So what happens if they all 3 vote for this recommendation for us to approve this proposal as is? What are our plans then?
Sorry. To that point, before you answer that question, because I remembered my thing,
Okay.
was that I do appreciate that, Mrs. Ordway, is that I am concerned and want to ensure that Dr. Finch, you or whomever you direct, that all teachers receive notification of what the proposal is, because one of the things that most certainly has occurred is communication that there was not a clear understanding of what the previous year's proposals, especially surrounding Prop 123 monies were. And so since Ms. Leyva did indeed state that they only send it out to members of DVA, I want to ensure that every staff member in the entire district sees that, or is able to see it. So if we have to email it, put it on the portal, whatever.
I see Ms. Leyva is shaking her head, so perhaps there's a misunderstanding. If you would like to clarify.
Ms. O'Brien, through the chair, Ms.
Frank?
Oh,
Frank.
please, you know who I am.
It's getting late. Sorry.
That's all right, I helped you.
Sorry. To clarify, we do not have the means to do that to just members only, and all the information, all of our meetings are open to all certified, except for tomorrow's, because there is a vote. And whenever we vote on a DVA budget, then it will also be closed for just members only. But the representatives represent their whole school. It is not exclusive. It is inclusive. So there's no possible way. We do not have the means to send it only to members only. We do not have that capability to do that. We have never done that. We will not do that in the future.
Okay, thank you for that correction.
Yeah.
But I guess my point though still is that the folks who will vote tomorrow, are those who are members, and they vote based on the membership that they represent, which means that there are people who are not necessarily represented in that vote. So I want to ensure that our teachers see the plan and have the opportunity to respond to board members or our administration if they so choose.
But to that point, I would like to say, I think the reason Ms. O'Brien's bringing it, or I'm assuming the reason she's bringing it up is I too have received a lot of correspondence that from teachers who are not members that will say, well, we never know, we don't see it, we find out after the fact. We would like a table at the seat, or a seat at the table. Sorry, it is late. And so I too would like it to be emailed to all certified staff, because then you catch all of our others as well. So
Right.
they at least know what's being proposed.
But to that point, when I was a member of DVA and I was a site campus rep, I was given time at the staff meeting to report information that I received through DVA. So I reported to everyone who was at the staff meeting. I didn't necessarily know that they were all members or not. And if someone who wasn't a member asked me a question, I answered their question. So I think it's important that the email goes out to all certified, everyone understands, but I don't want anyone to have the misperception that it's a secret club.
Well, I
It
did
isn't.
ask Ms. Leyva before who it gets sent out to, which I think is what prompted Ms. O'Brien's
Yeah, I
question.
think, no,
I clearly there was some misunderstanding. I still, based on communication I've received from our certified staff, I just want to ensure that everybody receives it. I'm not saying that that DVEA members don't, or building representatives don't share it. I apologize if that's how that came across. I just am looking for us to communicate it. And
all staff deserves to have the information.
And my one other thing is, if Jim could, or Dr. Finch, could you please provide us the list of positions covered in B2, the certified non-teaching or other professional staff that are covered in that area, please?
Okay. And Ms. Tweedy.
I had a few more questions, so or requests. So I guess what I would be interested in, and to answer your question, because I'll just answer it directly. I do respect NST, and certainly in considering and what they ratify, but I answer to the voters and the constituents. I mean, I was elected for like an oversight, not just to approve everything that was put in front of me. So for example, the current plan, I would vote no on it. And I will tell you why I'll vote no on it. Because I'm not going to go out and have the people who voted for me ask me why we have the teachers that are paid less than our peers, and this plan does not address closing that gap. I want to see that gap closed. And then we're going to go out for bonds and overrides. I'll damage the district if I approve this. If we're going to give a higher admin raise than Peoria, than Dysart, then we cannot expect our admin expenses, and we're not going to close the gap on the teacher's salary. No, I'm not going to go out and complain to the people that, or explain to the people that elected me. Yes, these are the types of things I approve, and I think you should give me more funding. I'm just not going to make that argument. So, and what was put in front of us tonight, all of our students are going to be walking to school next year if I approve that. I mean, I'm sorry, so I need to send it back out there and say, no, we got to do better. We're not going to give the job that has the shortage a lower increase than other people that make the same dollar amount as them. That's nuts.
Well, just, I'm not going to get into a full-blown argument because that's what it seems that you might be interested in. What I was trying to, or difference of opinion, pardon me. What I was trying to explain is that when they come up with their suggestions, in order to respect the process that we have in our policy that says they are representing their people, is that we should understand why they came up with their suggestions. We have employees that are members, employees that are not members. We have information that you've given tonight that is going to be checked, information I get. But until we see what that information actually is and how we can apply it, it's all anecdotal. So all I'm saying is we respect what their thoughts are and how they come to their thoughts, and then we put our input, and then we'll get the facts, and then we'll figure it out. I do answer to the public, the students, the taxpayers, and I think that they might be feeling that we're a bit disingenuous if we continue to have employee groups that we fail to listen to. So that's all I was saying, is that we need to understand what the premise is of their decision and not ignore it. That was what my purpose was.
Okay, so go ahead, Mrs. Fisher.
I just, because I think we're each, all of us, getting on things, we're hitting points that are important to us or to things that we've heard. But I just want to point out that Mr. Miglerino stated that the specifically transportation recommended the $1 before
Right.
they knew there was something different. So something has changed. I think it's important that we give them the opportunity to say, okay, something has changed. We need to rethink this.
Sure.
Because it's not that, yes, if they had just said it and nothing had changed, then it was what they negotiated and we should honor it. But there's a change, so.
Okay. So we've discussed this for a fair amount of time, and I just know historically that the later it gets, the less productive we become. I believe we've asked Mr. Miglerino for some specific information. It does not sound to me from what I'm hearing up here that we are ready to vote to approve this item. That's the what I'm getting.
I would move that we table the item.
Okay.
Can I just ask one thing? We've been having meetings every single Tuesday. And I know, do we have one scheduled for next Tuesday?
Well, that's because we moved a meeting.
No, I know we did, but I'm saying, do we have one for next Tuesday?
For May
though?
22nd, we have a meeting scheduled.
Because I don't want our employees to leave the school, the end of the school year, not knowing that they have a raise. That, I mean, they need to know. And the only reason I'm saying this because they're talking, they're worried, and the public has overheard conversations at Safeway and are saying, hey, you're not giving your employees any raise. And I think they need to know the school year's ended. I'm coming back with X amount. So I just, my ask would be that if we table it It does not get tabled beyond the next meeting.
No, we would need to bring it back as an action item for next week.
I would concur with Mrs.
And
Fisher.
it sounds like one of the areas that we really need to look at is the bus drivers. I think I've heard that from several board members, as well as closing the gap between what we're offering teachers, average pay versus other districts, and closing that gap so that we're competitive. So that's two takeaways that I got from tonight's conversation. If anyone would like to add something they heard that I've not mentioned. Otherwise, we have a motion to table the item, and I'll need a second.
I'll second it. Oh, sorry.
I'm going to say let us specify that it's tabled until May 22nd.
Okay. So do you want to amend your motion?
I just moved to table it to May 22nd.
Oh, I didn't hear the May 22nd.
No, I
Okay.
didn't. I didn't add it. I'm just going to add it because we haven't voted. So
Okay, perfect.
And I'll second it with the new.
Okay, so we have a motion to table it until May 22nd. We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. So that motion carries 5-0. So just to be clear, so our employees are clear, is that we have tabled this pending further information. It will come back to the board for a vote on May 22nd.
So they can be with us again.
We'll see you next week.
I'm loving it.
By the way, O'Connor's up 4-1 in the bottom of the fourth against Mountain Ridge.
Okay.
4-1.
Okay, the car's gonna let it
Hey.
Meeting's not over.
Oh, our meeting's not over. Don't you want to stay until the bitter end? We have to. Okay, so we are moving on to preview item 7A, preview of reclassification for mechanic via apprentice advancement. I know the most exciting topic of the evening, Mr. Miglerino.
President Frank, members of the board, Dr. Finch, the requests that are before you are part of our apprentice program. There are two different requests, one from our crafts apprentice program within our facilities department, one within our transportation department, one of our mechanics. This is the 4-year commitment that we made to these employees 4 years ago, that if they join the apprentice program, we pay them a lower salary for 3 years. They test out of that, so there's a skills test that they're given. They are brought up to the level of that trade position, and if they stay in the position for an additional period of time, then we bump them one more range. Both of these employees have met that requirement, and we wish to honor this as a reclassification as they qualify for that part of the apprentice program. But we understood that the board wanted to maybe have a discussion about it so we could entertain any questions that might be asked.
So just to make sure I understand correctly, the reclassification rewards those employees who have completed additional training, have passed mastery or skills mastery, and then are making commitment to stay in their positions. Am I understanding that correctly?
President Frank, that is correct.
Okay, so they've had to do a certain amount of training and then demonstrate that mastery in order to qualify for this reclassification.
That is correct.
Okay. Do we have a discussion or questions on this item for Mr.
Nope.
Michelino? Okay, so are you?
Sorry,
Just
I have
let it
one
go.
question. One question. I apologize. Is it just two people,
two-
or is it two positions that are in?
President Frank, Ms. O'Brien, it's two individuals, one individual that happens to be in our crafts facilities department, one position, one individual that happens to be in our transportation department as a mechanic.
So it's the people who are being reclassified, not the positions, if that,
President Frank, that is a great distinction. Yes, it is the
Okay.
people that are being reclassified.
because they're
not
the ones
position.
that did the work.
Right. Thank you for
Okay.
the clarification, Mr. Miglerino.
I have one further question. Were you planning to bring this back to us as an action item at the May 22nd meeting?
President Frank, yes, we were, and it could be a separate item, which is how we intended it, just so that you would be able to.
Okay.
But it could also end up in HR changes, our human resources changes, if that would be the pleasure of
Okay.
the board. We'd just make it a separate item. Was our first inclination.
Okay, so, I mean, I'm fine with it in HR changes. I don't know if my fellow board members,
For transparency, I
For
think we should
transparency,
just have it
okay.
separate. just so that they can't say somebody snuck it in somewhere, because it'll happen.
Okay.
Right, I think because we did it as a preview item here, we should continue it on. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Migliorino.
All right. Okay, thank you.
I move we adjourn.
Well, I didn't ask for a motion yet, so I think that concludes our business. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Probably not. Okay, meeting adjourns at 9:45. We do have another meeting.
That's like
We're going to-
supersonic record.